All right, we're going to start. This is the Google SOAP API usage with Salesforce session. Before we start, a quick note that you should always base your purchasing decisions on what's currently available. My name is Ami Asayag. I'm an architect with CRM Science. We're a Salesforce development consultancy. We work on App Exchange apps. We work on enterprise apps or enterprise clients. And we work a lot with integration, so this is right up our alley. I'm also one of the Salesforce developer user group leaders.
My name is Yad Jayanth. I also work for CRM Science in an advanced developer role. I, too, head up one of the users groups in Dallas, Texas, developer users group. So please feel free to move to Dallas to join our users group.
I should move to Philly.
Dallas.
Philly.
Dallas.
All right. All right. Today we're going to talk about DoubleClick for publishers, which is a Google API. And we're going to use that as a sample project. DoubleClick is something that is used by the digital advertising space a lot, and it's a very, very common theme. As per Google, it's a advertising management platform that enables selling, delivering, and measuring digital advertising operations. And basically, and I'm going to refer to it as DFP, DoubleClick for publishers. So it's an advertising management platform, and it kind of makes sense for an advertising firm to actually want to merge that information into their Salesforce org, because they can mesh the information that they get from DoubleClick, like ad success rates, cost, revenue, with things like accounts, opportunities, and so forth. The API is a SOAP API, so that is so it uses XML, and we use Auth to authenticate, the normal Auth 2.0 Handshake that Google has, and that's a JSON interface. So to set up the project, we're going to assume that the client already has a DFP account. All we need is for them to provide to us or give us access to get the network code. It's like a few digits number that we'll need for authentication later on. And we also have to ask them to enable the API access for the account. Then we have to create a project in Google Developer Console. And the Google Developer Console, or a project in the Google Development Console, it's kind of like a connected app in Salesforce. So if anybody used a connected app or developed a connected app in Salesforce, it's kind of the same thing. You specify a URI, and you get a client key and client ID that you can use in your project. So we're going to do a little demo to show you how this looks. So this is a kind of a simple interface that we can use to integrate with DFP or actually with any other SOAP interface. And basically what we want, before I show you how to get set up a project in Google, we set up a SOAP integration custom setting, and we have all kind of settings that we can use throughout the project. As you can see here, we can actually have multiple, so you can actually sign into multiple DFP accounts. Let's manage. This is kind of how it looks like. And you can see that we don't have a refresh token. We don't have expiration. We don't have an access token yet. And in the UI, the same thing. We're going to try to authenticate against this DFP account. So this is the Google developer console. This is the URL that you need to use. You have to have one of these projects to authenticate against this project. Maybe.
Control++.
Yeah. There you go. Ooh.
Zoom out.
That good? Sorry about that. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to authenticate from this page. I'm going to click on this button, and it's going to come back to this page. So I need this URL, which is our redirect URI. And I'm going to create a project. I'm going to call it my project. And this is a project ID you're going to need later at some point. It's case sensitive. We'll just leave it as is. And it's working. Still working. All right. Back to project. I have this new project now. The name really and the project ID are not really significant. Oops, that's not the wrong one. The next thing that we need to do is we need to go to the API and Auth section, and we need to go to credentials. Let's close this. And the first thing, so we need to create a new client ID. And this is, we want to use the web application. Obviously, we're in the cloud. We want to specify the redirect URI. And we want to specify just the base URL. The nice thing about the Google project console is it's really nice because you can have multiple of these. So you can actually have or support multiple organizations, both, all instances, both if it's a prod or if it's a sandbox, developer orgs, you can have multiple of these. So then once we do that, Google goes and thinks about it a little bit, and it's going to provide us with a client secret and a client ID. And these are the ones that we want to, this is a client secret, and this is a client ID. That's what we want to go and copy into our custom setting. So you can see I already have one from a different project, the client secret and the client ID. And yeah, in a little bit, we'll show you how this works or how to use that. So now let's show you how this works in real time. So I can go here, and I can just click on Authenticate. It redirects into, let's refresh that. It redirects into a Google page. So this is the normal Auth Handshake. I'm already signed in to this account. So otherwise, it would ask me for a username and password, just like a normal Auth Handshake. I'm going to accept. Then it's going to go back into, it's going to redirect into that redirect URI that we just talked about. You saw that for a little bit, it was thinking about it. And the reason is because you can't do a DML operation in a load of a page. So what we did is we actually kind of faked it. We updated it, and then we sent it back to the UI. So now you can see that we have, it says it's authenticated, we have an expiration, and we have a refresh token available. If I refresh this, you can see that these are all filled in. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish as far as the OAuth authentication. And I'll have Yad show you how this works in the code.
Restart that timer. All right, everybody, so you saw a good little introduction to what the end goal is, basically to get some data from DFP. Ami showed you that, and he also walked you through what the actual authentication process involves. So I'm going to take a step back here and talk about what exactly we're doing here. So we're using the Google SOAP API for DFP as an example for basically a larger set of integrations that you may come across, most of which implement the OAuth 2.0 security implementation. And so I'm going to cover exactly what that involves, what the kind of things you'd have to look out for, and some of the things you'll have to implement yourself through code. The whole objective here is that you've got data in an external system, and using an API, you want to get access to it. But one of the things is you don't want anyone else to get access to it because your data is probably your most valuable asset in whatever business you're in. So the OAuth implementation lets you have a bit of peace of mind as you access that data. And importantly, it doesn't force you to use your login credentials with a third party. That's one of the most important things. We're going to go through what Ami had mentioned, a token, basically something that's disposable, that's unique to your session, but not unique to your ID permanently, that allows you to temporarily access that information and basically ensures that it's unique to what you're trying to do and that nobody else is going to be able to use it. Right button? So this is what we call the OAuth 2.0 handshake. So what we see in the red rectangle and the yellow rectangle is the handshake, and after we proceed through that, green basically indicates the actual callouts to get the data, and that's what Ami will be talking about after I step off. So the main objective, as Ami showed in the custom settings, is we're trying to get the access token. The access token is going to be our key to be able to get that data when we make a callout in the green section. Every time we make one of those callouts, our access token is going to go with it and ensure that we have access to that data. And it isn't permanent. As we noticed before, that does go inactive, and you'll have to get a new token after a certain time. And I'll explain in more detail what that involves first, a little bit later. That involves the refresh token, as you can see. So when we're talking about the initial part, we saw that Ami was on a Visualforce page, and next to one of the custom setting entries, he had an authenticate link. That's basically something that the client who's installed your managed package, for instance, or if you're building an internal project, that's the way that you're going to go ahead and authenticate your integration. Basically, what we're doing there in the first step is we're redirecting your web browser to the API's page that they should have specified what URL you should hit with certain parameters in order to give you your access code. Access code is different from an access token in the sense that you need a code to get a token. The code will be visible to you once you're redirected to Salesforce. You may have noticed that when Ami clicked the authenticate button and then he went to the API, pressed allow, the authentication code was actually in the URL. So in this first part, we're making that redirection, getting that code, and as he mentioned, we saw the little loading wheel for a second. All that happened was your code was getting that authentication code from the URL and then making another callout in the background that you're unaware of to get the token. And that token is what we actually keep. The code is completely disposable. We don't need that code after we get the token. In fact, we can't use it after that anyways. So the yellow part is what I said, it happens in the background. It's an actual callout to the API's endpoint that's usually specified in their documentation, and that pulls the token. And we have a method for actually parsing that JSON result. It may be XML in the case of some other API. In this particular case, it's JSON. And we take that and we put it in a custom settings record. So let me show you a little bit of what we need to gather around. So there's a few places where we have different information. From the API specs itself, in this case, Google DFP, we've got the endpoint and the scope. These specify basically what you want to get as far as data is concerned. In the case of Google, obviously, there's many APIs. In this case, you want the DFP information. There's a unique endpoint for that data, and the scope is a parameter that specifies what subset of that you may or may not want. From Google Console, which was kind of the overarching place where all of your integrations reside, you have the client secret and the client ID, which is specific to your application that you just created. As Ami had shown you, he created that new DFP integration. That created a client secret and a client ID. These are long alphanumeric strings that we're going to pass back with our request to get the token in a later step. The DFP itself has a network code that's static, so we just pull that and put that in a custom setting as well. And lastly, in the last step of the OAuth handshake, we're going to get the access token and the refresh token, and that's going to be the heart of our future callouts. So this is some of the code initially to return the URL that will control our redirect. So once again, I'll reiterate, this is only to get the code, the access code. If we just stopped after this step, we would not have a live integration. What this does is gives us the token, or it gives us the code, which we then use to get the token, which I'll describe later. So if we look at the first line, we're setting the endpoint. And as I described earlier, these come from different parts of what we had just set up. We've got the response type code, which specifies what we want back from this redirect. There are other integrations, such as a JavaScript-only integration, which can just bypass this whole process and get token, but it's much less secure as a consequence. The client ID is something that we noticed that we got back when we created that app in DFP. The redirect URI is extremely important. As Ami had noted before, that's basically the page that the API sends you back to with the code in order for you to make your call out and process this to make the token. We noticed that this comprises of two parts. It was the server instance. We saw, in this case, I think it was C19, CS19, some sandbox, and also the Visualforce page, which is the last part of that. So it's very important in the case of creating managed packages that you're very precise with this redirect URI. We found through experience that your namespace will get applied to your Visualforce page, so once you deploy, and this goes into a client, the namespace will be prepended to your Visualforce page, and that is extremely important for your redirect URI. So as you'd also noted, some APIs can be a little bit quirky, in which case you would not be able to specify multiple redirect URIs. And we just had an experience in that case where, because Salesforce is divided up into any number of server instances, it was a problem for us, and we had to get them to go in the back end and actually set up something to allow all the Salesforce instances to make these redirections. So the scope, as I'd mentioned, is something we'd pass in based on information that we got from DFP. And the other two are just required parameters that Google specifies in the documents in order for us to get the refresh token, for us to get a new token later on. So as you can see at the end, we just returned the URL. Basically, we had a base URL, and we added various parameters to it, and we're going to send this off. So before I go to that slide, so what's happening here from a user standpoint is you physically got your web browser redirected to a login screen of the API of your target. In this case, we didn't see a login screen because we just logged in, so the session was still active. We saw a button. That's pretty much your last chance to deny this. That allows you from then that point forward to move forward and proceed with the authentication. So this is about getting you about halfway there. After you successfully pressed allow, you were redirected to your Visualforce page with the authorization code in your URL as a parameter. And this is basically just an inner class inside of our integration that's going to parse the JSON to get what we need from it: access token, refresh token, and it kind of operates as a way of, I don't know, how many people have worked with JSON and deserialization? A good number of you. So for those that haven't, basically you get this key value pair, a series of key value pairs, and you have to take the information you want from that. So by doing deserialize, by deserializing it using this class, specifying this class, you can actually not have to manually go through each key value pair and pick out what you want. It automatically gets an object, in this case an access token response, from which you can specify which value you want, put that in the custom settings, and let you work with it later in future callouts. So this is basically what's happening behind the scenes once you're redirected to your Visualforce page. We've got the URL parameter appended to the URL, the authorization code. We're getting that, and we're going to make an actual callout. And you can see that because we're specifying these the body parameters here. That's pretty standard. We also see that there's some headers that we have to send to the API. But what we're not seeing is something that we've implemented that we may do a blog post in the future. It's a reusable integration framework. We're using a combination of custom settings and some code that basically you send it this body, you send it this endpoint, and it kind of generically makes this call out to get the token. And that's kind of the recommended approach we take to this, rather than specifying this each time we make a new integration. That's how you were able to see that there was simply a second custom setting record on that page with its own authentication process. It's very generic. You just pass it the body, pass it where you want it to go, the endpoint, and it does the rest. And the whole point of this is to populate that custom setting. So that's about it. What we saw was, I'll pull that slide back up. What we saw initially, to recap, is that we made the redirect to get the authorization code, which we just temporarily stored in memory, to make that call out, which got us the access token. The access token is what we need to make the actual callouts to get the data. Now I'll hand it off to Ami, and he'll describe what we're going to do to make those actual callouts.
All right, so now we have, so this is a Google SOAP API, but as you can see, you actually have to do a JSON handshake to get the token. But once you get the token, now you have to use a SOAP or an XML structure to communicate with the Google API. So in the past, you could do that by using the Google Data API toolkit. The problem with that is that that really communicates with older APIs. The authentication scheme on these APIs are deprecated now, and it doesn't include some of the enterprise APIs that you really want to integrate with Google. You can also download the WSDL from, in this case, from DFP, and then use WSDL to Apex to convert that into a class. That sometimes works. I don't know how many of you have used that, but that's kind of a pain. It never really works very well. You have to do a lot of massaging, and even if after a lot of massaging, it doesn't really work. It has to do a lot with reserved words that Apex has and so forth. So that's really not a really good option. Another reason why this is not always great, because you can't really control the payload. You send parameters into the class, and you send it. You make the call that way. So you can't really, have a logging infrastructure around it or something like that. So the alternative is really to use HTTP callouts and basically use SOAP bodies in XML to send the payload into Google. So let's see how this works. So we want to use the normal HTTP patterns to kind of reach the Google DFP. And the first thing we need to do is to set up the XML body. It's a SOAP transaction, so it's really a string. It's a string that is inside an envelope, very similar to an HTML page. It has a header and a body. In this case, we want to have a request header inside a node, inside the header, and you want the type to be a SOAP request header. Right now, we're going to add the authentication parameter, and basically it's an authentication node. The type has to be OAuth, and inside you want a parameters node that says bearer, space, and my access token. This is actually not very clear in the documentation, the Google documentation. So very simple, but not very clear in the documentation. In the case of DFP, you also had to add the network code node, and that's the network code that we got before. If you remember, the DFP account has the network code that you have to add here, and we saved in the custom setting. And lastly, we need to add the application name, and the application name is the project, the name of the project, the unique key that we gave the project in the Google console. And lastly, we have to format the body of the SOAP, which is basically the request. Most of the time, it's kind of like a SQL or a SQL query, a SQL-like query. So this is kind of an example, but obviously that's not going to work. This is how it looks for real. You know, a lot of SOAP kind of junk. And you can see that you have the access token right there inside the authentication node. You have the network code inside the network code node, and the project name and the application name. I recommend that you use the XML stream writer to you know, to format this. It's a lot easier and much more reusable, obviously, than just hard coding or you know, a string. So now that we have the body, we can make a call out. So we want to create a kind of a generic callout method, and this callout will get an endpoint. Google DFP has several endpoints because you know, depending on what resource you want, you may want to call some. You know, you may want to call different portions of DFP. I don't want to give you all the technical terms here. You want to send it a method. It's either a get or a delete or a put, and you want to send it a body. The goal here is to be generic. So we want to set up the request. We use the parameters that we got from the caller to set an endpoint, to set the method. Obviously, we have to instantiate the HTTP request. And we also set a time up of some number that makes sense. We then have to add some more headers that relate to the transaction. This type, the content type, that's what text XML, that's what Google wants for the SOAP payload, and also this SOAP action parameter into the header. Again, that's specified by the Google documentation. You then make you know, the usual callout that you make, and it's an HTTP send callout, and you take the request and inspect the results in XML. Again, XML stream reader. It's a lot easier to manage the data that way. In this case, what we always used to do, like Yad said, we use a generic kind of call-out or integration infrastructure that we continuously reuse with different clients. And that includes logging. You always want to do some logging, especially if you have, it's in a package. You can do a lot of things. It logs, the clients can see it, you can see it, get more information about what you were, what happened, right? Everything happens after the fact. You can even make it, send you an email if you want. And again, you should always use the XML stream reader. And lastly, when you do build callouts, you have to always think about delaying the commit of any database action, because you can't have sequential callouts and DML actions, or you can't have a callout DML action and another callout. So again, in our infrastructure that we've built, we actually have a delayed commit type of operation that you can do. It kind of saves everything that it needs to save at the end when you know that you're done with all the callouts. And that's all we have today. I'll be happy to answer any questions. All right. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is it XML stream reader or XML?
It's XML, yeah. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
I have a quick question about those OAuth communication.
Could you speak into the microphone? Sorry.
Say again.
When you are requesting the code and token,
Oh, so you're doing a post to send the code and get back the token. So the post is because you're sending all these parameters with it. You're posting a body. So, yeah. You'll still get a response which contains the token.
so both communication is both round. In the OAuth 2, there's 2 round of communication, right? Both are by post?
The first one is actually a redirect. It's not a call out. So the first step is a redirect to the API URL, and then there's a post call out after that to get the token.
So you're returning, it's like a link that returns a
URL parameter.
Yeah, URL parameter, and that URL parameter refreshes the whole page. Okay, so you kind of go, you give up the session, you go to Google for the, to exchange or to allow the user to put in the username and password. And when that happens, they call back, or when it's approved, Google will send it back to the URI that we specified in the project.
I see.
You see, so it's really the first call is actually not a call out. Mm-hmm. It's you use the URL to just refresh the whole page.
Yep.
Got it.
That makes sense.
Thanks.
Sure.
How much control do you have over the duration of the session token?
Not at all.
Not at all. So how long does it last?
With DFP, it's, I believe, 60 minutes. So what we did with DFP specifically is, again, it's great to have like an infrastructure that you can use, reuse. Mm-hmm. So basically, we check if the session is likely to be over, because we save the time, mm-hmm. and then if it is, we go out. We authenticate again we're using the refresh token, yeah. Get back the ID. So all that happens without the user even knowing. Exactly. So you can do that. And alternatively, if it fails, we also can, because it fails because of authentication issues, because it's expired. Also, we can just turn around, make a call out and again, without the user even thinking about it.
Can you set the duration of the refresh token? Or the number of times that you can use the refresh token?
No, not with DFP, no.
Okay.
I mean, you wouldn't really need to. So at that point, you've got your refresh token. That's your refresh token. It may expire in 60 minutes or so. You'll get a new one with your new token, your actual access token.
Yeah.
So and that's hidden from the user's experience, and so it's a good user experience for them because it'll automatically refresh.
Right.
Yeah.
How long can you do that until they have to get involved again?
It happens
really never.
Never?
The only
Okay.
time that happens is if the user changes their password or Google revokes their access or
So
something like
it's
that.
a permanent pairing,
Pretty much,
unless
yeah.
you go in and remove the pair.
Once you authenticate, it's pretty much permanent until something happens with that token, with that with the username and password. The username change, the password change.
Okay.
At that point, it will reevaluate and tell you it's wrong. And at that point, again, you can bubble the error into the user and say, hey, something changed. You need to re-authenticate. Send them to the right page.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So how would the two-step authentication work, like, because this all hits from Salesforce servers? So how would the two-step authentication work? Like, is that every time the session is like reloaded, if it's going through a different IP from Salesforce?
Yeah, we haven't done a two-step with DFP, so I actually don't know the answer to that.
So if there is a two-step authentication, when the first time when I to give my password login, just like you showed in the other screen, so it prompts me to give me the ID sent to my phone or email or something.
I think, so again, I don't know specifically, I haven't tried it, but I think what happened, Google keeps the control for the duration of the time that they need to know any information, right? So it will refresh, because you basically handed off the session to them, and you're not in Salesforce anymore. So if it's two-step, it probably will refresh a couple of times, asking the questions that are needed, and then it will still get back to the redirect URI. So I mean, you don't really care about what happens, once you send it off to Google. I mean, it will send it back to you. I mean, it will send it back to you when it's approved.
Okay.
Right. As long as you get back to that Visualforce page with the access code and the parameter, then in the URL as a parameter, then everything else will kick off the same.
So like, so once I'm on Visualforce page, I'm trying to say like, I had some links on Visualforce saying, give me my Google Calendar or Google Events that I have on the Visualforce page. So it would obviously hit these screens and check for my authentication. So if the meantime Salesforce switches its IP addresses, like I'm redirecting to a different server. So will I be logged out of the Google session and will be forced to give the password again?
So you don't have to re-authenticate because we're saving your token that is specifically to what you, to the user that you logged in as. So it doesn't matter if you logged into Google with some other username. We're really dealing with that specific user that we authenticated against.
Yeah, that's the important thing to note. What I showed is what you would initially have to do in order to get that token, but from that point on, you can go on using the app in this case however you want, and behind the scenes the token is refreshed if necessary, or it just makes the callouts without you knowing either way.
Right, and the thing is that you can set, the way we did it, showed it in here, it's one username and password for the whole org.
Right.
But really you can set it up for each user having to do that for their own username and password if the client wants it to be that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. Thanks everybody.